Hey YouTube, it's me again with part 3 of my video series concerning Canaan. For part 3 of this video series, I will be discussing the secrets surrounding Canaan and his descendants. In order to find out more in regards to this secret, we need to look into the Book of Jubilees. Now, the Book of Jubilees is a pseudepigraphal and apocryphal book, which contains much detailed information regarding the first two books of the Canon Bible, the Book of Genesis and the Book of Exodus. With that being said, I will now read from the 8th chapter of the Book of Jubilees, which describes Noah dividing the earth into 3 lots. Each of his 3 sons would get a chance to receive a portion of the earth for themselves and their descendants. Shem was a fortunate one. He received the middle area of the earth. Japheth drew the northern part of the earth, and Ham drew the lot towards the south of the earth. So let's read a little concerning Shem and Japheth's inheritance. Book of Jubilees, chapter 8, beginning with verse 11, it says, "And he, Noah, called his sons, and they drew nigh to him, they and their children, and he divided the earth into the lots, which his 3 sons were to take in possession. And they reached forth their hands, and took the writing out of the bosom of Noah, their father." Verse 12, it says, "And there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons, for the generations of eternity. From the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water from the river Tina. And his portion goes towards the west, through the midst of this river, and it extends till it reaches the waters of the abysses, out of which this river goes forth and pours its waters into the sea Meath, and this river flows into the great sea. And all that is towards the north is Japheth's, and all that is towards the south belongs to Shem." So now that we gather some information regarding Shem and Japheth's portion of land, let's read a little bit of the climate that was in each one of Noah's sons' land. You can read about it in that same chapter of Jubilees, chapter 8, verses 29 through 30. It says, "This is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons as a portion of his inheritance, which he should possess for himself and his sons, for their generations forever. 5 great islands, and a great land in the north, but it is cold. And the land of Ham is hot, and the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is of blended cold and heat." So here it lets us know that the land of Ham is hot. And if you do a search for 2526 in the Hebrew on the Strong's Concordance, it gives us confirmation that the land of Ham is hot. 2526 in the Hebrew on the Strong's Concordance, it says, Cam, Quam, the same as 2525 in the Hebrew, hot, from the tropical habitat. Hence, Africa, Cam, a son of Noah, also his descendants, or their country, Ham. So it gives us more information regarding the climate of the land of Ham and his descendants. Not only that, but it lets us know that he was a son of Noah, and he dwelt in the continent of Africa. Moving on. We read a little concerning Shem and Japheth's portion of land. Now we're going to read a little concerning Ham's portion of inheritance. Jubilees, chapter 9 and verse 1. It says, "And Ham divided amongst his sons, and the first portion came forth for Cush, towards the east, and to the west of him for Mizraim, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him, and to the west thereof, on the sea for Canaan." So here it lets us know that Canaan was assigned the western part of the continent of Africa. So After all three sons of Noah received their inheritance of the earth, they proceeded to each of their respective portions of land for themselves and their descendants. Now I'm about to read how Noah follows up by placing a curse on any one of his descendants that seeks to occupy and settle on land that was not assigned to them. So let's read a little regarding the curse of stolen land. Jubilees chapter 9 and verse 14 says, And thus the sons of Noah divided unto their sons in the presence of Noah their father, and he bound them all by an oath, imprecating a curse on everyone that sought to seize the portion which had not fallen to them by lot. Verse 15, next verse of Jubilees chapter 9, it says, And they all said, So be it for themselves and their sons forever throughout their generations to the day of judgment, on which the Lord God shall judge them with the sword and with fire for all the unclean wickedness of their errors, wherewith they have filled the earth with transgression, uncleanness, fornication, and sin. Now, when reading through the Bible, one of the mysteries we find is that God commanded the Israelites to annihilate the inhabitants of Canaan and conquer the land. Once the land of Canaan was conquered, the Israelites did not conduct major war campaigns to take over faraway lands. It was just the land of Canaan that was singled out for annihilation. Now, one has to ask themselves, what was the cause for such a severe judgment? Considering that Shem is the uncle of Canaan? Well, the answers lie within the next few passages of this book of Jubilees. So let's read. This is regarding Canaan's strongarm robbery. You can read about that in Jubilees chapter 10, beginning with verse 28. It says, And Ham and his sons went into the land which he was to occupy, which he acquired as his portion in the land of the south. Next verse, verse 29, it says, And Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. And he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is, towards the sea. And he dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward, from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. Verse 30, it says, And Ham his father, and Cush and Mizraim his brothers, said unto him, Thou hast settled in a land which is not thine, and which did not fall to us by lot. Do not do so, for if thou do so, thou and thy sons will fall in the land, and be accursed through sedition. For by sedition ye have settled, and by sedition will thy children fall, and thou shalt be rooted out forever. Next verse, verse 31. It says, Dwell not in the dwelling of Shem, for to Shem and to his sons did it come by their lot. So here we read that shortly after Ham took his sons to go occupy each of their territories they had received as an inheritance, Canaan, however, instead of going towards the portion of land assigned to him in western Africa, decided that he liked the western part of the land of his uncle Shem. And so he went ahead with his descendants and settled there, despite having sworn into the oath and curse which would befall any son which stole territory that was not given to them. It makes sense that it was attractive to Canaan to settle there. This was the promised land after all, a land flowing with milk and honey. At that time it was the best land in the entire world. The land which Canaan settled on was the most sacred part of the earth spiritually. Verse 32 says, Cursed art thou, and cursed shalt thou be beyond all the sons of Noah, by the curse by which we bound ourselves by an oath, in the presence of the holy judge, and in the presence of Noah our father. Verse 33, it says, But he did not hearken unto them, and dwelt in the land of Lebanon from Hamath to the entering of Egypt, he and his sons until this day. Next verse, verse 34. of chapter 10 of the book of Jubilees. It says, "And for this reason that land is named Canaan." So, here is the record in the book of Jubilees of how Canaan stole the blessed land from his uncle Shem. As a result of this, Canaan came under a curse. Another curse, I should say. A yet further truth is that the descendants of Canaan, the Canaanites, were intermingling with the progeny of the Watchers, thus producing a race of giants. You can read about the Canaanites' association with these giants in the book of Numbers, chapter 13, beginning with verse 27 and ending with verse 33. It speaks about how 12 spies were sent to enter the land of Canaan to spy on it. Immediately, the spies noticed that there were giants in the land. The spies were then terrified to enter the promised land because of this hybrid race of giants which lived among the Canaanites. If you read Numbers chapter 13, verse 29, it says, "The Amalekites, who were descendants of Esau, dwelt in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwelt in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwelt by the sea and by the coast of Jordan." Now, these names that you see being mentioned here, Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites, these are all descendants of Canaan. This is the progeny of Canaan. They would eventually grow into tribes. It says here that they dwelt in the mountains. If you skip a few verses down to verse 33, it says, "And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we felt as small as grasshoppers, and that's how we must have looked to them." So, this is yet another reason God commanded the annihilation of the Canaanites. They had committed perversion with the enemies of Israel, thus produced a corrupt race of giants after the flood by intermingling with the offspring of the Watchers. So, goes to show you the loyalty of Canaan and his descendants. And on that note, I'm going to end this video for part 3. And in part 4, I will be going over in much more detail the curses surrounding Canaan and his descendants. And I say curses because here we read that this curse regarding stolen land fell upon Canaan and his descendants by stealing the land from his uncle Shem. And there's another curse that I haven't gotten a chance to touch on in Genesis chapter 9. So, I'll see you guys in my next video, and God bless.